everyone, my name is Alexandra and I am a watercolor artist. Today I want to show you guys another version of some autumn leaves. I want to show you guys how to paint a fall maple leaf with watercolor and ink. We're in the month of November, so leaves are changing color everywhere that you look. And honestly, it's one of my favorite things to see, one of my favorite things to paint. Can't wait to share. Let's get started. Alright, so what you will need today for supplies is 2 cups of water. I have one for dirty water, one for clean. I have a napkin for drying my paintbrush on. For paintbrush today, I'm just using one size. I have the Opus Allegro number 6. For paper, I have 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. And the watercolor palette that I'll be using today is Art Philosophy & Co.'s Woodlands palette. It just has a lot of really nice fall colors in it, but the main ones that I'll be using is the Foxberry, Redwood, Cavern, and Bear. But if you guys are using, honestly, any type of orange, red, brown, and maybe a little bit of yellow in there, you should be all set. So the first thing that I have done is I have drawn out the shape of my leaf. I have a sample right here of one I did before that is a little bit more detailed, but we're just gonna use this as a reference. I have linked a PDF below with a template for the leaf, so if you guys are intimidated by drawing the leaf, then go ahead right now, pause this video, download the template, and you guys can print it out and use tracing paper, or honestly, if you're looking at it on a computer, sometimes it works to just put your paper on that and the light from the computer will shine enough that you can trace it from there. For this leaf, main technique we're going to be using is wet on wet. I have so much fun painting this style, especially with fall leaves, just because there's always so many different colors in the leaves when you look at them. Yeah, so we can just have fun with that and blend our colors in. So what we're gonna do, I'm kind of gonna section it off a little bit as I paint, but we're gonna start by wetting in our leaf. So it'll be a bit harder to see on the video, but I'm just going inside all of those pencil lines that I have drawn. And I'm making sure that my paper is nice and saturated, nice and glossy, but I don't want to see the water dripping on my page, but just enough to give it a shine. And if you guys want to, feel free to grab a smaller paintbrush just for the details around the edges of the leaf. I'm using my bigger one, but I'm just using the very, very tip of it. Okay, so now that it is fully wet, we are gonna have to work relatively quickly, and I'm going to go straight into my paint colors. I'm gonna take my Cavern color and my Redwood, and I'm just gonna mix the two. And again, you have to work super quick while your paper's still wet, but I'm gonna go in to the edges of where I painted. I'm just letting that color bleed in. So you'll notice right away as I'm painting, the color sort of on its own is just working its way into the center of the leaf. But I'm going along the edges and then I'm just bringing it in a bit more. Naturally though, it wants to fill in where the water has been painted. And then if you find that your paper starts getting a bit dry, then you can just go ahead and add more water. Okay, so now that I've done that sort of around the edges, I'm gonna take a lighter version and kind of just dot it into the center, but I also wanna be careful to leave the white space just because it gives it a really neat effect, especially once you layer the pen on top. And now I'm mixing some of my brown and redwood together, and I'm just gonna go in to my leaf kind of at some of the tips. Give it this really nice depth to it with this sort of burnt red color. The main thing that we're doing is just mixing colors in. All right, and the last thing that I'm gonna do is add a tiny bit of green in there. I'm not gonna go too crazy with this, but I just wanna give it a little bit more dimension, and then also the look that it hasn't quite fully changed colors yet. So with my cavern and redwood colors mixed, I'm gonna take a lighter version of it and just paint the stem. And now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna let this dry. So I'm just noticing some white spaces that I wanna fill in a little bit more. But you'll notice that I still left at the center quite a bit that's very light still. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this dry. Because I really saturated my paper, I am noticing it is buckling a little bit. Normally I either tape around it or I would stretch my paper before. If you guys are interested in knowing how to do that, how to stretch your watercolor paper, because it's super helpful, especially when you're doing watercolor washes and things like that, leave a comment below and I can show you guys how. But yeah, it'll help you avoid some of that buckling when you're using a lot of water, kind of like I'm having a little bit happen here, but that's okay. All right, so now that our leaf is dry, we are going to go in and add our ink. For my pen today, I'm using a Micron 01. I'm actually using a brown color. In this leaf that I painted here, I used black, but brown is nice for fall, so we're gonna go ahead with that. Whatever you guys have is fine. You just wanna make sure that it's not too thick so that we can get these really delicate and fine lines. Okay, so first thing first is we're gonna start by outlining our leaf. And what you guys will notice here is I am somewhat following the lines that I've painted already, but I'm gonna go off of them a little bit and just add in some sort of more jagged edges. Just because I want to give it that really loose look. So it's okay if my pen lines are not perfectly outlining my leaf. Alright, now before doing the bottom, I'm just gonna go out on the other side. And again, you'll notice that I'm just adding in those jagged edges. For this one, if you want to see more specifically what I'm doing here, then again, you guys can go to the PDF that I've attached below and look at the drawing template that I've provided. I know sometimes with painting, especially if you don't have as much experience drawing, that can be the most intimidating part of it. So hoping to make this easy for you guys, but if you're going to freehand it, that is awesome as well. Okay, so I've now worked my way all the way around the leaf, and I'm just gonna outline my stem here. Give it that nice definition right away. You can kind of see the shape a little bit better, a little bit more clear. So first things first is we're gonna do our main veins. So I'm gonna do the center one coming down. So I'm starting from the very tip and I'm drawing a line all the way down. It is not gonna be super straight, not gonna be super uniform. Have it a little bit wavy. If you guys have watched any of my other tutorials, you'll know that with my lines, that's usually one of the biggest things that I say, is to just keep everything really loose and natural. And on the drawing guide that I have, you'll see I've put these lines in nice and faint so that you guys can get a closer look, just in case it's a little harder to see on the tutorial here. So main idea is I'm doing a line, they're all curving towards the center bottom here. So if I look at my leaf, I sort of have these 5 main points. So that's where I'm drawing all of my lines in from to the center. And it's okay if they sort of just cut off at the bottom here, because we're gonna add some dots and some more color in. So now that that is done, I am gonna go into this line, into these lines, and I'm gonna make them a little bit more thick and a little bit more defined. So if you're looking at my sample that I have here, you'll notice that I have them thinner in some spots and then the line thickens a bit and goes thin again. So the way that I do that is I'm actually gonna follow this line that I've already drawn, but I'm just gonna weave my pen onto either side of it. And then once I've done that, I'm just gonna color in that little white gap in the middle. And we're gonna do the same on all of these other ones. So this is a super simple ad, but I use it often when I'm doing my line drawings just to add more interest to my paintings. Okay, so now that we've done that, I kind of want to start filling in this bottom bit a little where I've made all of my lines join together, and then we're gonna go in and we're gonna add some veins. So what I'm doing here is I am just adding a whole whack of tiny little dots. So I'll move my hand for a second just so you can see where I'm adding them. But I'm just filling in this part of the leaf with so many dots that you can't actually see anymore where that was covering. Now I can even do some little scribbles just to fill that in with the dark color more. And then I'm gonna work that all the way down this stem. So it's a mixture of little dots and scribbles. On the stem coming down, I'm staying on the right side here. So it just acts as some shading there. One of my favorite techniques while painting, which you guys may have noticed in some of my other tutorials, is adding pen details and adding dots and lines to drawings and paintings. It's one of the things that I did when I just started with watercolor, so I find it's something that I love going back to. So as you can see, this is starting to fill up. Now along my veins that I have going up, I'm just gonna extend some of the dots. Not gonna go too crazy, but I'm doing them on either side of the lines. Again, this is such a fun way, especially because the leaf allows you to really practice that wet on wet technique. And then when you go in with your pen, you can add that definition that, especially if you're learning, maybe wasn't necessarily there when you started painting your leaf in. All right, so we're just filling it in. So now that I sort of have this explosion of dots in the center base of my leaf, I'm gonna add some of the veins in, and then we'll go back and continue adding more details. So I'm gonna start adding some lines. We'll start with this main section here, and kind of where I see some of these ridges come down, I can do a nice, really thin line joining to the center line in my leaf. And I'll do some that have some gaps in them. I can bring some out if I want. I can branch some off. So I drew a line here. I'm gonna draw another one there. So just really loose, faint lines. I'm trying to make sure that they're not too uniform. If you want, like I did with this one in the corner, you can sort of extend it into a bit of a V shape and just fill it in with some dots. And then I'm gonna do this right away, but not as dramatic as those center lines. I'm just gonna add a little bit of thickness to some portions of them. So I do that just by going over with my pen. I'm going over very lightly, and then I'll lift it up and put it back down. And again, right away, if I want, I can add some dots in. So I'll add some around the center stem, and then I'll bring some up along the lines. What you guys want to look at when you're adding the dots in is making sure that you're not going too crazy and just covering your entire leaf. You want to be somewhat intentional with them. So my easy way of doing that is by following the lines that I've already drawn. So I'll add some more depth to this one. Okay, so now that I've done that main section, I'm gonna work my way down. So where I have this main dip in the leaf on either side, I'm gonna draw another line coming into the center, and I'll do the same thing on both sides. So again, with this one, just add a little bit of thickness, but I'm not going as dramatic as those first main 5 lines. And now I could use that line kind of as my guide for these next 2 sections. So these sections, I'm gonna do exactly the same thing as I did up top, but I'll work my way out along the lines that I have, that center line that I have. So again, as I come down, I can kind of lift my pen, leave some gaps in it. I can make some of them branch off a bit. And then I'm sort of ending that last line to leave some space for my bottom section there. So I've also put these guidelines in my drawing below, but I did them super light because I do think this is something that you guys can just play around with and have fun with. It doesn't have to be a super intimidating thing. You're just doing loose scribbles all the way along. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm gonna go back into certain ones and make them thicker, just like I did above. So I'm not doing it along all of them, just along select few, and I might make them a little bit more full and heavy towards where the center is. All right, so I'm gonna jump ahead and do the sections at the very bottom there. These ones, exact same concept, but we're gonna keep it a little simpler, so we're not doing a ton of lines there. I'm just gonna do a few branches off of these 2 main lines there. So again, really loose, natural looking lines stemming off. And then I'll go back over them a second time and just add a little bit of thickness to them. Okay, and now going into this section, we're gonna go ahead and add the dots in. Again, same concept. A lot of it is just following those lines that you've already drawn, but not every single line. Leave some with no dots around them. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do now that we're done the center, and again, you guys can add as many dots or as few as you want. I always try to start with less. Sometimes less is more, or have them very much sectioned and make sure you're still leaving a lot of white spaces. But the last thing that we want to do now is just work around the edges to really give it that defined look, which is what I did with this first sleeve here. So I'm gonna first outline a second time what I've already done and just work on making some parts thicker and more defined, but not necessarily even across the board. And then once I'm done doing this, we're gonna go ahead and add some dots in. So again, you're doing the exact same concept that you did with those first guiding veins that we drew, and you're just adding some thickness to some portions of your outline. Okay, so now that that's done, we're gonna go kind of to the tips of our tree and we're gonna add in some dots. So I'm going sort of at my main 3 tips, and I'm just gonna add some dots into it. And I'm just fading it out as I go. So it's very condensed at the tip, and then I'll spread it out more as I work my way down. So now if I want, I can kind of extend that into some of these other points that come up off the tree or off the leaf. So as you can see, I'm just working my way down the edges of the leaf, and I'm just picking sort of some of those jagged edges to add a little bit more depth to, just by adding the color and doing the exact same concept that I did here at the center. And now I'll work my way back up the other side, focusing on those tips that are bigger and kind of section off each part of the leaf more. All right, so once you guys are done adding that detail to the edges of your leaf, you are all done. Sometimes I will go back in with some more paint and I'll add more color if I want, but what I have here, I like it how it is, so I'm just gonna go ahead and leave it. If you guys followed along, I hope that you enjoyed. Make sure to take a picture of it, share it with me on Instagram at Alexandra Victoria Studio. I absolutely love to see what you guys are painting. Also, if you are not already, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and I'll see you next time.